Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast for episode 143. The Game Awards nominations have dropped. So you know we're talking about it right here at the Spotlight Games podcast. Joining me this week, Jordan, a.k.a. Cognitive Clips. Welcome back to the show.
Cognitive Clips. What's up, man? Good to be here.
How you doing?
Good. Doing pretty good today.
Good.
How are you doing?
You know, I'm comforted, Jordan, because you can't see in the current frame, but I'm comforted in knowing that Santa loves my big ass, as my sweatshirt says. So, you know, for some people, we've entered the holidays. Our Christmas tree put up yesterday.
Ours has been up for about a week, probably.
Sometimes it's best to just embrace happiness. How about that?
I like it.
You ever think about that?
Just let it be known, like on the record, Santa loves a dumper.
That's fucking true. Santa loves a dumper. And we love a dumper here at Spotlight Games. Jordan, it's been, I don't remember when you were here last. But
it has not been 1 week.
It hasn't been a week, that's for sure. Last year we had the scumbag GWT Maury, who was supposed to be here tonight. And the only reason I'm being so mean is because when he told me this morning he couldn't come, he expects to be ripped apart for not being here. So I'm chewing him up.
Ratchet and Clank ripped apart.
Yeah, he's been
for
ripped
not being
apart.
Here. Was it me? Because I was like really looking forward to being on content with him for the first time. And
so I wasn't going to give his reasons because his life is his life, but he did say I would have come if it weren't for Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips, being on the show. And I said, well, I'm not kicking him out. He's too handsome. And he said, all right, you've chosen your side. I'll choose mine. No, he had a conflict and was not able to come anymore.
Conflicts, they happen, folks.
They happen, folks. They happen. But this is the Spotlight Games podcast, where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod, or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so that you are notified when we go live, so you can be part of the conversation. Unsure, Jordan, if we're going to be streaming outside of tonight this week on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. But the good news is, if you follow us on socials, if you follow us right here on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod, you're going to be notified when we go live. So just lock in, abres los ojos, open your eyes. I think maybe that's how you say that in Spanish. Maybe. I might have butchered it. I remember, have you ever seen the movie Vanilla Sky, Jordan?
I've seen like a chunk of it.
They say that, or Penelope Cruz says that in the movie, and it's always stuck with me. But so we'll see if I remembered it correctly.
Abuela Madrigal says it a lot, or a couple times in Kanto.
See, there you go. I've not seen Kanto.
You un-Encantoed swine.
Yeah, that's me. But finally, final piece of housekeeping, join the Discord. We got a fun little Discord where we discuss what we've been playing and generally goof off together about video games. So if that sounds like something you'd like, click the link in the description or find it in the bio of our socials to join the Discord. In fact, click in terms of the bio of our socials. Speaking of our socials, we've kind of abandoned Twitter. And by kind of, I mean, officially today I tweeted, you've not seen us here for a while and you're not going to go to Blue Sky and everywhere else, because now beautifully you can see in the bottom right corner, if you're watching this on YouTube or right now, like Cole House Jr. is on Twitch, we're at Spotlight Games Pod everywhere. What a beautiful feeling.
I love that.
I don't have to do this Spot Games Pod here, everywhere else bullshit anymore. I can just say, follow us at Spotlight Games Pod. Boom.
How does it feel to be free of that?
Honestly, it feels so fucking good, Jordan. If I can be completely vulgar and honest with you.
I'd have nothing else but your vulgar honesty.
But you know, it feels great to not have to do that shit anymore. So if you're not on Blue Sky, it's essentially Twitter, but a lot less toxic, at least so far. Go join Blue Sky. I'm having a great time with it. It's like a really nice space right now because it's still so new.
Mhm.
It's growing fast. Like it is getting millions of people a day. So I'm really kind of enjoying this very kind of baby moment it's having before it becomes, like all social media platforms eventually come, just a fucking mess.
Right.
So join us there before it really gets into a mess. But Jordan, as I said at the top, Game Awards nominations live yesterday. Us right now live. Twitch.tv/PodLikeGamespot. We got to talk about it. But before we do, I do think it would be worth our time and the time for our audience if we briefly discuss what we've been playing. I don't have a lot to report, but I have a little to report. But you've not been on the channel in a while, so I want to hear, what has Cognitive Clips been playing with his spare time?
Absolutely. One quick thing. You mentioned babies. You mentioned honesty.
Yes.
I want to send some dirty love to Cayman Doherty right
Yes.
now. And I want to give him some vindication.
Yes.
Because infamously, while we were discussing Echoes of Wisdom a few weeks ago,
Yes.
He said that it sucked that I was my daughter's father, which was hilarious. And he apologized profusely, and I gave him crap for it.
Still got to clip it.
All in good fun. But there was a moment in that episode where you did the whole I'm gonna cue you up, do the thing.
Remind me what I said. I forget.
The music, the Law and Order.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's coming. It's coming. Fuck. We kind of talked about this pre-show, but I didn't realize that I was going to be.
I didn't either until just now. So
that one, or do you want the music?
That one. That was all I needed. The question
Let's run it back.
Yeah. So it came up that maybe Jordan needs to be put on trial.
And here we are, the trial of Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips. What do you have to say for yourself?
So
Jordan?
New evidence, old evidence actually was unearthed. I was feeling nostalgic. It turns out that my very first appearance on Spotlight Games podcast was on the 16th of last November, and it was discussing the Game Awards nominations.
This very topic.
Exactly, what our picks would be. I went back and listened to it over the past couple of days, and one of my very first quips on Spotlight Games podcast was saying that my daughter likes playing games with me, but she's not very good at it, and therefore I should kick her out. So I want to give Cayman that vindication that maybe I'm not so good at this fatherhood thing.
He's going to be thrilled to hear it. And I do have a message for you from Cayman himself, actually.
Okay.
He wants me to cover a few of his thoughts because he's not able to be here today.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he would like me to say, and I want to be crystal clear, John, you might clip it out later, but I'm going to be crystal clear. These are the words of Cayman Doherty, not the words of Patrick Schweiger.
Oh, no.
Cayman says, tell Jordan that his kid will never be better than me at video games, even if I'm crippled and half dead. His words, not mine. His words, not mine.
Oh, Lord. Yeah,
so,
that's good.
so that's what he has to say to you.
I love it.
But yeah,
as for the topic,
as for the topic at hand, what you been playing?
Yeah, since we last had me on here, I played through Neva and absolutely adored it. Cannot recommend that game enough. I have also played through 1000 X Resist, 1000 times Resist, whatever the X means in that
interesting.
game.
You don't know the exact way to say it.
I don't.
Now that is interesting.
Well, they don't actually say the title of the game a million times with a button prompt in this one. But that was also fantastic. Wish it would have been nominated. Spoiler alert. But we persist. Nevertheless, we persist. And I also did finally pick up a 1,000 Year Door remake.
Yeah, what you thinking?
I'm liking it, man. I haven't played it since the GameCube original. I did when I got my used Wii a few years back, at like a Facebook Marketplace situation. My cousin actually mailed me his GameCube copy of 1,000 Year Door, and I'm pretty sure I just like popped it in there, like intro cinematic, found a save point, boop, and then like went on and did something else. So it's pretty fresh in my mind as far as or it's not as fresh in my mind. So it's almost a new experience. Yes.
Yeah.
My cousin that I talk to almost every day just hate him.
Just pure hatred.
Eric in the chat, Hecky Grace.
Hecky Grace.
And Yeah, I've collected the third Crystal Star. The third one was a bit of a slog, as you and I were talking about in our dirty DMs.
They're so dirty.
So glad to be through that section, but otherwise it's charming, you know.
And it
The
is truly one of the most charming games I've ever played.
right?
And it's genuinely so funny. Like there are so many times that I laughed out loud. I LOL'd Jordan.
Mhm.
But there were, I mean, you're not wrong though. Like that part in particular, if you've played the game or if you've not, there's like a wrestling section where you're in this Glitzville, it's called, right?
Yes, Glitzville.
And you go through this just like nonstop. It's like 65 battles, it feels like. And it's like the same kinds of enemies over and over and over again. It's not as bad. There's a part, I don't know if you've come across this, but there's like a part in the sewers where you can basically do that, but it's like 100 floors of just battles. And it's
I
like,
came across that and did not decide to hop down.
I thought one day, I don't remember what we were watching. We were watching something mind numbing. So I was like, I'm just going to do this now. I'm going to do 2 mind numbing things at once. But the Glitzville section is one of the most just mind numbing sections of that game. But you're in for some good shit now that you're past that for sure.
Yeah, because I remember loving it when it came out. Like I've always had fond, feelings about the game. So
Yeah.
it's been nice to pick that back up. And I think we also talked about it, just you and I, or maybe in the Discord, join the Discord, that I feel like this is my last game that I'm buying for the year,
Sure.
just because it's going to be holiday season. People
Yeah.
want to buy physical gifts for people because, that's just a nice thing to do for family, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
So I think this will be the last one for the year. And if I do wrap it up by the end of the year, then that will be 20 releases from the year that I played through. So
2024, baby. Yeah, I respect it. The you stopping buying anything. I'm sick and I can't do that. And which is why everyone around me that tries to buy me gifts for whether it's my birthday, which is coming up, or Christmas, are like, I hate buying you gifts because you buy everything you want yourself. And I was like, well,
no, this year, like my wife straight up was like, "Can we just agree not to buy each other gifts this year?" I'm like,
I'm getting to that point in my life where I'm like, we can move on from gifts just in general. Don't just think of me. Maybe let's have some dinner, and that's about it.
Yeah. And the last and not least is I've been going back and continuing to play through more Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. I just cannot put that game aside for very long. It's been 9 months since it came out almost. And I still find myself jumping back into it just to
I love that.
go through some post-game grinding. So yeah.
First of all, we loved grinding.
We do.
And second of all, we love post-game. And third of all, anything that makes you happy, we support. However, Eric the Human, Mr. the Human in the chat says, speaking of about the 20 new releases, has Spotlight Games signed my petition about Jordan being an alien? Where's the dotted line, brother? I'll sign away.
Heartbeat.
I'll sign away. And our sweet dumpster boy in the chat says, my gifts are paying medical bills. We need to make a little tips link for our sweet dumpster boy for those medical bills. In terms of what I've been playing, I've been chugging along with Dragon Age the Veilguard. I'm not going to talk about it because next week, friends of the show, Jerkachu, aka Jerkahana, and Jake Twitchin, we're going to come on. We're going to do a full Dragon Age review. Probably spoiler cast as well. Probably like a mixture of both. But that's going to be next week right here on twitch.tv/PollyGamesPod. So in the meantime,
solid lineup.
What can I say? In the meantime, I've been playing so much more Pokemon trading card game Pocket. But like nothing really new to add there. Everything I said and yelled about last week, I still feel. I only need 2 more cards to complete my main 226, but I have like so many more EX special star cards that I don't have. So I'm not counting those. I'm just counting. I just want to get that 226/226 in my Pokédex. And then last week, right here on the channel, you and I played a little Rise of the Golden Idol together.
We did.
Game provided by PlayStack, the publisher of Rise of the Golden Idol. I played the prequel earlier this year on the channel. This is the sequel. My last game at the Fantasy Critic League for me got me a cool 15 or 16 points.
Respect it.
We respect it. It's a point and click puzzle game. You're solving murders, you're solving mysteries, and it oozes character and its art style is great. It's telling like a really interesting story. We really enjoyed our time. It can be a bit frustrating. Sometimes it's a bit obtuse for the sake of, which is frustrating. Of like, okay, you're trying, like the way that the game works. If you've not played it, this might be hard to visualize, so I won't go on too long. It's a point and click. So think, back in our childhood, Pajama. What was his name? Pajama Sam. The putt,
that sounds right.
Those games, like those
Yeah.
the point and click games. It's that style where there's a flat surface. And there's all things around. There's characters, there's things you can interact with, and you click them and you get like words from the things that you're clicking on. And it might be characters, it might be events, it might be items. And then each encounter, you essentially have to solve the mystery and use all of the words that you've gathered to fill in the blanks of like this prompt that they give you, which might not sound fun, but it is fun. But sometimes like they make you just keep repeating the same thing. But so then you get in your head of like, okay, well, I've already talked about this and that.
Right.
So I'm probably not going to need to mention those again, but you do. And it's like sometimes they purposefully try to throw you off the scent of what the mystery is, which is probably part of the fun for a lot of people. But speaking for both of us, we were getting a bit frustrated on stream of like, can we just be a bit clearer with our intentions here?
Yes, one of the obtuse ones that tripped us up was the scene in question had a very prominent, the moon was very prominent in the scene. And you found a calendar inside the room where the crime happened, and it had the lunar phases on the calendar. And so Patrick and I naturally just assumed we would just pick the corresponding phase for the date. But no, the moon was slightly different. So actually we were supposed to have known to choose the date that was in between two of the phases. I'm like, would you stop?
That was completely absurd. And Dumpster Boy in the chat brings up a great point. He played the first few levels thanks to Netflix, actually. If you have a Netflix subscription, you can play this game on your phone, your iPad, your tablet, whatever. And from what I'm told, I have not played it. I meant to before we recorded, and I totally forgot. But it seems to be they've really optimized that version of it at with the point and click of just your phone on the screen. So definitely check that out.
I think I told you that I did after our stream. I did go ahead and do the same for the first game because it's also on Netflix, and so I played a little bit on my phone. And yeah, it actually is pretty well optimized for the pointing and the clicking. But I got to a point where it was kind of like that frustrating part where I've got like 36 different words, and I just didn't have the patience to sit through and like whip out a notepad and then connect the dots with some yarn, and so I just kind of put it aside.
And then final thing that I've been playing, I got back into 1000X Resist myself. I started it a while back, talked about it on the show, but it's one of the things that we've been talking about a lot in the Discord recently from our own Cognitive and Mr. the Human in the chat. All of this discussion was like, you know what? Because I really liked the first hour and a half I put into it. I was like, I just got to get back. I don't remember what came out. Something came out at some point that pulled me away. And it was a game I was really excited for. Mm-hmm. I don't remember which one it was. And so, I'm playing Veilguard here on the PC. I haven't quite gotten the courage to go back to Metaphor, but I'm about ready to go back to Metaphor. And my portal comes very soon. So I think that's going to be my kind of get back into Metaphor moment. And so I was like, you know what? Let's whip out the Steam Deck. Let's play a little 1000X Resist. And I'm already like the hooks are already in me so deep. So very, very excited to get going on that. And then so before we move on to our topic of the show, Eric in the chat asks, when do you guys plan on doing the fantasy league thing again? I dabbled in a league this year and it was fun. I think actually, was it end of December or beginning of January that we did it last year? Do you remember?
We did beginning of January. I remember because we set a time to where Prince of Persia hadn't come out yet.
That's right.
So that we could draft it.
That's right. So yeah, we'll probably do that. We'll probably do first or second week of January, which who knows, might be a little exciting situation that time of year. Who's to say? Ring a ding ding. Happy New Year 2025. Here we come. Jordan, any last thoughts on what you've been playing before we move on to the topic of the show?
My brain is empty.
All right, then let's talk about it. So yesterday, as of recording, a few days ago, as of release of the podcast, the Game Awards nominations have been announced by the Game Awards. We got like 26 categories this year, something like that. So what Jordan and myself and our sweet dumpster boy, electronically, we have his predictions in the doc that we'll be going over. We're going to go through like we did last year. If you listen to last year's episode, we'll discuss who was nominated and who we think are going to win. We're going to keep score. And then in December, when the Game Awards happens, we're going to get back together and all talk about how Jordan came in last again for the second year in a row. But for this, we're going to be skipping anything esports related, anything content creation related, just because I don't think any of us knew a single content creator nominated. We don't follow esports. We are not the voice of esports. So there's no point in us guessing.
But everything else, in general, people who make content are kind of just idiots and don't even need to be listened to or talked about or talked with. So
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Full stop. So before we jump into the nominees, our predictions, general thoughts on the list. This is something that we've kind of been pontificating about. We've been theorizing about. General kind of high level thoughts before we start going category by category from you, Jordan.
Yeah, I was scrolling back through my notes just now, and I feel like I highlighted maybe 3 categories where I felt like there was a very obvious snub based on what I'd played this year. But out of 20 plus categories, that's not too bad.
Sure.
I do think that. Well, we'll get into the controversies
for sure. Yeah, we'll talk about the controversies.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a pretty solid lineup, pretty solid year of gaming. The ones that are up for the the game of the year and stuff are not ones that I've even played, which is pretty rare. Usually, I've played at least 1 or 2. I did dabble in the demo for one of the 6 nominees, but otherwise, my list looks very different for best games of the year than what this one does. But that's okay,
And that is okay.
All right.
There's so many fucking games out that
so many.
There's so many. So I honestly, most of these categories theoretically could look totally different because of just the sheer amount of games that come out. I'm mostly aligned with you. I think it's funny. We've been talking about this in the Discord a lot lately of comparing this year to previous years, specifically last year, and how there were just so many clear titans last year with Baldur's Gate, Tears of the Kingdom, Alan Wake 2. There was one more that is escaping me right now that felt like a clear, doesn't matter. But there were because those 3 are the 3 that kind of ran away with just about all the awards. And this year just doesn't seem to have that. I feel like a few months ago, maybe we kind of had this inkling that maybe it would be Rebirth, maybe it would be Astrobot. But as the year is kind of settled, it does feel like it's a pretty even playing field across the board, which is exciting. And I feel like last year, I don't remember the exact results, but I remember, obviously we've joked about how you didn't score a lot, but also last year, you had a very clear rule set. I'm mostly just going to vote on the things I've actually played, which makes sense. And so, but last year, Cayman and I got 80% right in what we predicted. And I don't think that we're going to come close to that this year, personally, because I think it's just, there aren't clear winners like there were last time for a lot of categories, I think. So let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
First category that we're going to be discussing, we're just going to go in reverse order of the website, is most anticipated game. The nominees are Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Ghost of Yote, Grand Theft Auto 6, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and Monster Hunter Wilds. I think it's probably obvious, if you know anything about Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips, what he thinks is the most anticipated game. But I don't want to steal your thunder, Jordan.
Don't steal it. Give it Beyond.
What do you think of the category?
I think we're in a situation like there was last year where you see the name Baldur's Gate 3 on a category, then you just, why are there even 4 or 5 other games there? Because you know what's going to win. Grand Theft Auto 6 is on there. We know what's going to win the most anticipated game. So that is my official lock that in pick for this purpose. But as Patrick hinted at, yes, my personal pick is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I am beyond Excited.
Hey.
I absolutely adored the brief look we got at it from well, it wasn't during the game Summer Games Fest, but it was the Nintendo adjacent presentation that they did
Yeah.
around that time of year. Thought it looked stellar. Loved what they did with the remaster for the first Prime game last year. So I'm expecting great things, and I don't expect to be disappointed.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I definitely, by the time, do we have a date? I forget, like a specific date?
It just said 2025.
2025. Probably like middle of the year or second half of the year, like from the middle, I would guess, but maybe not. But yeah, of this list, like I'm excited to play Metroid Prime 4, and I really want to play at least the first remaster before that comes out. But of this, my personal one, I would say Ghost of Yote. I'm
Mhm.
really excited.
Totally fair.
I also don't necessarily believe we're going to get it next year. I also don't necessarily believe we're going to get Grand Theft Auto 6.
Right.
But Grand Theft Auto 6 is so obviously the clear winner here. Like if
Yeah.
any of these other games were to beat it in a most anticipated category, then we know that nothing else can be predicted in this.
I will eat a
because-
shoe
yeah, for sure.
live on air.
What, the sequel to the best-selling property of all time? Sure.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's gonna win. Next up, best adaptation. We have Arcane, Fallout, Knuckles, the classic show Knuckles, Like a Dragon, Yakuza, and Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft. I'm actually not familiar with that Tomb Raider one. Is it an anime?
That is the
remembering?
new anime style one that's on Netflix.
Got it.
Laura is voiced by Haley Atwell, aka
Ah,
um, you know,
cool.
Sharon.
Have you heard about it? Like, do you know if it's any good?
I've heard it's not great,
Damn,
actually. Yeah. I
that's
didn't check it out myself. What I did check out between Friday of last week and yesterday morning was the entirety of the available Arcane episodes.
I'm so glad that you.
For the first time ever, by the way.
Yeah.
This isn't like, oh, I need to do a rewatch. No, I had never touched it at all, but everyone rightfully would not shut up about it
Yeah,
ever.
it's so
And
good.
It's so good, man.
I think it's
That's
episode
my pick.
3 of the first season.
Hmm?
With it's like there's a clear time shift the next episode.
Yes.
Oh my god, that episode, are you kidding me? I was
Dude.
watching that with Rose a month or so ago because she had never watched it, and I wanted to rewatch it before season 2, which I've not started yet. But I remember the show being sad, and I remember the show being amazing,
Mhm.
but I didn't remember a lot of specifics. And by the end of that episode, she was so mad at me about not warning her for how sad this episode was going to be. And I was like, I get that. I would also be mad at me too.
Yeah,
But the show is so good.
loving it. Cannot wait. I think their final 3 episodes come out Friday, Saturday. It's this week.
Cool.
As of recording, I
Cool.
believe.
So are you putting your vote behind Arcane?
I am. I know that there is definitely a solid chance that Fallout takes it, but whichever one wins, Ella Purnell wins. So
For sure. It's Ella Purnell's world. We're just living in it. It's
Pretty
so
much.
interesting to me because I can't help but wonder if if this was just being carried by the original love for Arcane. Not to say that that's wrong, but like by the time that these votes for nominees had to go in, unless they all had advanced copies, which I don't think they did, they were either just submitting season 2 as an idea, or they had only seen the first half and submitted that, which is so interesting to me that I'm like the nerd in me wants to know, like, what was that timeline? Did people
Right.
just expect that Arcane season 2 is going to be great? Because, as you have just said, and as people seem to agree, the second season is great, but that's just surprising to me. So that then I'm like, now I'm torn between Fallout and Arcane because of that reason.
Mhm.
Uh,
That's fair.
but because I think I can guarantee it's not any of the others. It's going to be between Arcane and Fallout.
And to address Brettaman Gaming's question in the chat, no, Haley Atwell is the voice of Lara Croft for this series on Netflix. I think there's the whole other project that's, I think, through Amazon, where they've been like going through a whole bunch of different people or writers and actors for that role. But no, this one for Netflix, it is Haley Atwell voicing her.
Cool.
I'm like almost positive.
Cool. I'm going to side with Cayman. Cayman put Fallout as his official guess. I'm going to go Fallout only with that idea of like, I might end up, as I say that though, it's like the voting is live right now as Arcane is going to end. So if they, you know what, I'm going to go Arcane. I'm going to side with Cognitive. I'm going Arcane here. And then also, I didn't mention it, but because it was obvious, Cayman also said Grand Theft Auto 6. Okay. Shocking. Nobody. Next up, best multiplayer game. We got Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We got Helldivers 2, Warhammer 40K, Space Marine 2, Super Mario Party Jamboree, and Tekken 8. Jordan, what you think?
My heart pick is Helldivers 2 because I had a blast with it. We collectively had a blast with it on stream that one time, that one beautiful time. I think I'm going to lock in a vote for Black Ops 6, though.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's really popped off as far as, you know, the conversation. People seem to love. A lot of people love the campaign. I've heard actually some mixed things, but as far as the multiplayer is concerned, I feel like everybody is just giving it, 8s, 9s, 10s across the board. So I think that's probably a pretty solid lock for the win.
I'm going to go Helldivers here. I feel like Helldivers probably won't go away with a ton of awards.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's going to win some. And I can't decide between like ongoing this community. Like, I don't think it's going to get all of them, but I feel like it's going to get one, maybe two of them. And so
I'd be shocked if it got none. I think it's going to get at least one.
I think it's going to get at least one. And so I don't know if my tactic is going to be do Helldivers 2 in all of them and hope I just get at least a point or two instead of kind of jumping around. Undecided. But I do think that it's most likely between Call of Duty, like you said, and Helldivers. Maybe a Tekken 8, but I think Tekken 8 has its own category theoretically. So we'll see. And then Cayman was with me on Helldivers 2 there as well. Next up, best sports/racing game. Jordan, what you think?
This one I have no stakes in, but I do like that EA finally broke away from their contract with the crime syndicate known as FIFA. So I'm going to go ahead and just say EA Sports FC 25.
Okay. So I did a little research here.
Okay. Lay it on me.
Surprising everybody. I actually did some research.
He can read.
Turns out I can read. Every single year except one, a racing game has won this category. And the one year that it didn't win, it was a Tony Hawk game. However,
interesting.
So the only racing game here is F1 24.
Yeah.
However, F1 24, not good reviews. And also the F1 franchise has been nominated like 5 or 6 years in the past and has never won. Essentially, it's always been like whichever Forza comes out.
Yeah, Forza
Mario Kart won 1 year, a Crash Bandicoot racing game won 1 year. But normally it's Forza. Like it kind of goes between Horizon and just the prime Forza franchise. So I think that this will be year number 2 that a racing game doesn't win. And what I'm between is, like you said, EA FC 25, even though that game also doesn't have a ton of amazing reviews. Like for people that play FIFA year after year, they're starting to get into that Madden feeling of like, can you change something? Can we update something in this game? But there is something about the Game Awards that I think is interesting that I think we're going to be talking about a little bit more later with other categories as well. This is a global event. It's not just the States, which is why like being between WWE 2K24 and EA Sports FC, I'm like, my heart says WWE because that seems to be the first game in the franchise in a long time that has kind of righted the ship. Mm-hmm. Everyone seems to universally really like WWE finally for the first time in forever, but not a global sport. There's not a huge fan base outside of the United States for that game. So I just don't know. Now, granted, the way that the scoring works for the jury, 90% the jury, which is various outlets and content creators, 10% the audience. 10% is obviously not a very big piece of the pie, but it can, I think, potentially sway if the ballots are close or
for
the
sure.
votes are close. So I think I'm going to align with
Mhm.
you, Jordan, and go EAFC 2025. However, I won't be surprised if WWE does actually take it.
Yeah.
For this one.
Let's pause for just a second to
Yeah.
address two things. One is a confession, and one is just background info for people who may not know.
Okay.
Confession is that when I was going through your document that you so kindly put together and sent, I completely misread EA Sports FC. And like for some reason, whatever abbreviated letters I saw, I thought that it was saying the college basketball or the
College
college
football.
I was like, yeah, totally, that's gonna win. Then I was like, wait, that says FC, that's football. Whatever. Yeah, I'm staying with it.
A shocking snub, though. I think.
Yeah,
Bringing
I
that
agree.
up, of like, I'm surprised that didn't make the cut over Topspin, a game that I don't think anybody liked this year.
Not even Topspin liked that game.
Yeah.
But for some background on the Game Awards, again, we'll touch on some of this later as far as what the implications are. But as Patrick was just alluding to, there is a voting pool, a jury pool, whatever you want to call it, of over 100 media entities. So they can be publications or websites that submit the names for what are finally whittled down to the final 5 or 6 games for each category. So I know a lot of people just want to act like Jeff Keighley picks everything himself, hand picks it, in his little workshop.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case. I'm not saying that he can't make improvements to some of the controversies. Like last year was not really addressing all of the massive layoffs and stuff like that. I know people have issues with him, but I'm not even going to touch on. But as far as like this specific thing of like wanting to blame Jeff Keighley for what is or isn't nominated, it's a global jury pool of over 100 people who all thought that these few games
For sure
deserve to be in each category. So take with that what you will. I just wanted to kind of clear the air a little bit because I know that that's not something that they always advertise. That's something that is on their website, but it's not like Jeff Keighley opens up his announcements, video with spelling that out for everybody. So,
sure. That's a great point.
Yeah. So
I'm glad you brought it
just
up.
have that out there in the ether for you. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to take it. In fact. Next up, best sim/strategy game. We have Age of Mythology Retold, Frostpunk 2, Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, Manor Lords, and Unicorn Overlord. Hold on. Quick pause. Rewind. Cayman put his vote behind WWE 2K24. I have it right here in front of me, and I keep forgetting to mention his vote, but that's his vote. So, sim strategy game, Age of Mythology, Frostpunk, Kunitsugami, Manor Lords, Unicorn Overlord. Jordan, I have a sneaking suspicion what you are going to vote for, but I'm up. Yes. What you got?
Both my heart and my lock-in are both Unicorn Overlord.
Okay. I had a feeling.
This is not only an overcorrection because I mocked the name of it during our fantasy draft. I actually played the demo and got instantly hooked, bought the full game, absolutely loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic game. Like we're talking about sim and strategy, the depth of the strategy behind like the combat system and like where your units are placed and everything. The systems are incredible. And I have never played anything quite like that.
Yeah.
So I really hope this takes the win. And I think it has a very solid chance to do so.
I have a feeling it will. I for a couple of reasons. I think this game, like you said, great. I mean, just about every game in this category was pretty critically acclaimed. Like most of them landed in that 85 to 86 range. I think the lowest of these was Kunitsugami, which is like 80-ish.
But people who love that game love that game.
Right, for sure. But I feel like Age of Mythology, Frostpunk, Kunitsugami, well, actually not Kunitsugami, Manor Lords. I feel like those three are super niche for specifically sim and strategy lovers. Mm-hmm. I think Kunitsugami had a little bit more appeal to a broader audience, being Capcom and being just like the style of it was a bit more, I think, accessible is not the word I'm looking for. Approachable.
Yeah.
But Unicorn Overlord has that like anime-ish, JRPG-ish pull of that kind of strategy game. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that for your outlets that don't really care about sim strategy games, I feel like they are more likely to have played Unicorn Overlord or Kunitsugami than the other ones. However, I'm a company man,
You are.
and my Fantasy Critic League team drafted Frostpunk 2. It got me a cool like 14 or 15 points. So I'm going to put my vote behind Frostpunk 2 from Harold's Darkness, aka Todd Howard's Ascent, or whatever the fuck I call it.
A play in 2 acts.
Yeah, a new play in 2 acts. And which does make this the first category because Cayman chose Manor Lords. This will be the first category of the evening where we all have our own pick. So
Interesting.
this might be a very important category for who wins. Next up, best family game. We have Astrobot. We have Princess Peach Showtime, Super Mario Party Jamboree, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and The Plucky Squire. Cayman put his vote behind Super Mario Party Jamboree. Jordan, what do you think about this category?
I'm locking in the pick for Astrobot because I think this is just an Astrobot kind of year. My heart is with Echoes of Wisdom, not only because I literally played half to 2/3 of the game, passing the controller back and forth with my daughter, which was a precious memory that I will always cherish. But also, just it has that style, it has that approachability. Very much, Zelda games, generally speaking, are pretty family friendly. There's a couple of like slightly darker entries. This is not one of them. But yeah, I think that it really has the stuff to be worthy of the award, but I don't know. Astrobot just has the juice this year. So I'm not confident enough in where my heart lies to actually put it as my vote.
I actually completely echo what you say, except I didn't play this with my daughter because I don't have one. And
that's a good reason not to.
Right. If I played it with my daughter that I don't have, I'm in trouble. But I do think Astrobot's going to win. And if I were a voting party, I would also vote for Astrobot. But because this is one of, if not the only Echoes of Wisdom category, and I had such a great time with that game. It's going to be in my top 10. I don't think it'll crack my top 5, but it'll definitely be in my top 10. And that game is it's such a fun time. And I would love to see it get some flowers. But I am officially going to vote for Astrobot as getting the dub. Astrobot. Next up, we have Best Fighting Game. We have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, also known as Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 4.
That's for you,
Cayman. We have Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising, not Relink. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, Multi-Versus, and Tekken 8. Cayman put his vote behind Tekken 8, and I am going to do the same. But Jordan, what do you think?
This is another one where I don't really quite have a dog in the fight as far as a heart pick, but I'm leaning toward Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. Those are just classics, and bringing them back like that, I'm hoping to pick that up at some point in the foreseeable future myself, because I used to love those games as a kid.
For sure. I do think if Tekken 8 doesn't win, it will certainly be Marvel vs. Capcom Collection, because it is apparently amazing. Like it's a really great collection of the various Marvel vs. Capcom games. I just think that with Tekken 8, I mean, it says like a 94 on Metacritic or something like that. Like it is so high up there. Like it came in a shit ton of points. I might be overselling it a little bit on its score, but that's one of the many reasons that came in is
no. I think it came out of the gate with a 90. I think that was one of the first releases for his.
But
his
still,
team,
like,
and it was a 90.
mean, come on, a 90 is for a fighting game is pretty fucking stellar,
right?
And one of the dirty dogs in the chat, Jake Twitchin, says this is a 2-horse race for sure. Oh, it sure is.
But Jake, this is not horse games. This is fighting games.
He makes a great
stick with it.
He got you dead to rights there, brother.
Love you, JK.
Next up, best role-playing game, also known as best RPG. Jordan, ever heard of it? We got Dragon's Dogma 2, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, and Metaphor Refantasio. Cayman put his vote behind Metaphor. If Jake were here, he wouldn't, because he calls it Metaphor out of 10 Refantasio. But Jordan, where's your head at on this category? I have some thoughts that I'll share, but I want you to go first.
I have not played any of these this year, aside from the demo of Metaphor.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the category for Erdtree.
Sure.
I would not be surprised if Metaphor takes it. I think that's, again, another 2-horse race here.
For sure.
Probably between those two. But I mean, from all accounts, all 5 of these were incredibly solid RPGs.
Yeah. The heart pick for me, like, I would like to see Dragon's Dogma 2 get a little love, because that game is just really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I am shocked that Dragon Age of the Veilguard is not, at the very least, in this category. It only got 1 nomination, which we're about to get to in a little bit, for accessibility. I'm like 40 hours into that game. I'm still in Act 1. I don't know how many acts there are, but I know there's more than 1 act.
I want to say 3.
That makes sense.
From what I heard, but yeah.
And this game is a marvel. Like, it's so good. Like, it's so clean. Graphically, it is one of the best of the last several years. I think the story is really engaging. I think the voice acting and the performances are across the board really, really good. I feel like it must be that just not enough people got their hands on it in a meaningful way before nominations were supposed to be sent in, because I just don't think that game doesn't deserve to be in this category. Like, that is, I feel like, one of the biggest snubs of individual awards of that one not being present, because I'm kind of speechless as that one not getting a nomination, honestly. But of these, I do kind of feel like it's a 2-horse race as well for Erdtree and Metaphor. But because this is, do we want to talk about Erdtree now, or do we want to talk about Erdtree in the other category it's nominated in? Jordan, what do you think?
We can rip the Band-Aid off if you'd like.
Wait, let's rip the Band-Aid off. So you had specified earlier that, all of these votes came in from a jury of like 100 plus people. And a few days before the nominations came out, they sent out like a statement about their updated rules that essentially expansions and DLC are going to be considered for every single award. And it was so funny watching the nominations live with Jake Twitchin on his channel.
That was a fun time.
It was funny how often throughout, anytime Erdtree would come up, the way that Jeff would word it of like, and just remember, I'm not the one picking these games. Anytime Erdtree was there. But this has become the debate of the week. This is the flavor of the month. Should Erdtree have been nominated? The conversations, I went into some weird accent there. The conversations had kind of started leaning into this of like, do we think it'll be nominated before that official statement came out? But a lot of people, there's 2 very clear camps here. It shouldn't be nominated because Elden Ring came out 2 years ago. This is just DLC. Give the flowers to the games that came out this year. And then there's the other camp of, it's a 40+ hour experience. It's basically, it's longer than a lot of games that have been nominated in most categories. It is a kind of a complete experience. People love that it's one of the best experiences of the year. It should be honored and rewarded. That's kind of the 2 sides of this debate. As Jake in the chat says, the elephant in the room. What do we think about this? Where do you fall on this debate of, do you think Erdtree should be nominated? We have some thoughts from Cayman the Dumpster Boy that I'll share, but I want to start with you, Jordan.
Yeah, I am in the camp that it's a large scale. This is across the board for any situation. If there is a large scale expansion that truly has its own like self-contained story within the larger narrative or whatever however you want to phrase it, I feel like it should, at this present time, be eligible for whatever category. I almost likened it to sequels for things, because a lot of people are saying, it's tied to Elden Ring. It's not a standalone. Look at Return of the King. Return of the King won every single Oscar it was nominated for that year. What was like 12 or 13 Oscars?
Yeah, it's
no
tied
one's
for the most
walking
wins
in
a year.
Yeah, no one's walking in and watching part 3 of a trilogy. You have to have the other 2 parts to really get to it. yes, it's possible to watch just part 3 or just play a sequel to something that is standalone. And I completely acknowledge that. Like, this is not one of the things where, like, how can you be so stupid? Like, both sides have valid points.
Yeah.
But like, that's just kind of where I stand. And again, wrapping what you just said into the mix too, where enough people thought that this was such a substantial achievement, such a substantial experience for their gaming, experience. I'm saying experience a lot. Such a substantial thing for 2024 as far as their gaming experiences are concerned, that they wanted to see it recognized. So I personally, for this present time, do not see an issue with it. I do think that in years moving forward, we do need a separate category for not only expansions, but also for things like remasters and remakes to get their own, special recognition that they deserve for their hard work. Because that is a lot of work, even if it is building off of what's, come before it, or however you want to phrase it. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell argument for me. And there is also one other tidbit that I didn't realize until somebody posted it on Threads. But yes, this is not a Game of the Year situation, but way back in 2016, I want to say, whenever The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine came out, that won for Best RPG.
So there is precedent.
So like,
here.
Where are we drawing the line? So if we're drawing the line that, you can only be nominated for the lesser categories, or, last year people were up in arms about Resident Evil 4 Remake being nominated for Game of the Year, but I don't hear a peep about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy VII Remake being nominated for Games of the Year.
Sure.
Not exactly comparable, but they are technically both remakes. And Blood and Wine and Phantom Liberty last year and Erdtree are all substantial story expansions. So it's like, if you're going to draw a line in the sand, it has to be a clear, hard line, or not a line at all.
For sure.
Until there is a separate category that's added in, which I do think is inevitable at this point. But
it's one of those growing pains of a young art form.
Yes.
That, games have not been around nearly as long as books, music, movies, all those things, right? So like, this is the 10th Game Awards. Like, obviously there have been a ton of other
11th.
Okay, this is the 11th. I thought this was the
10th. It's weird. So it's a 10-year anniversary, but
I see, but
it's the 11th.
Got it. Well, regardless, even though there are a bunch of other award shows, like this is one of those growing pains, right? And I think video games are just weird. Like, I think that's
full stop.
Like, full stop. Like, thinking about just categories in general: best action adventure, best action game, like best fighting game. So many of these share so many similarities, and some of these, like, even within the categories, like it's kind of weird that some of these games are even like in a category together. They're very different games. Like, what are like genre descriptions in video games is also just really nebulous, to be quite frank. And so many games are getting RPG elements these days that, like, in ways, a lot of games are RPGs that aren't really RPGs. So like, it's one of those things where, like, as gaming, as an art form kind of matures, I think these things, there's going to be, the dust is settling in a lot of ways. Pangea we're still in the Pangea phase, right?
We are.
And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's got to be. I think the easiest middle ground, like you said, like Jake in the chat says, have its own category. There was, once upon a time with the very first Game Awards, there was a best remaster category, and then that went away because it's always evolving. They're adding categories, they're removing categories.
Yeah,
which makes sense. I feel like that is, I think, the easiest solution. Because yeah, we're like, but then again, it's like, in a way, like, does there have to be a line of, it's all gaming, right? It's the Game of the Year awards. Like, I don't know. I'm just asking the question because I honestly don't know where I stand in this debate.
Yeah.
Like, I see the argument for Elden Ring being nominated. I see the argument of, like, Elden Ring has had its flowers. Let's honor things like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Let's honor things like Dragon's Dogma 2. Like, I see both things. I feel like this debate and how, like, activated it's making people, I feel like it's as if early access games have been added to the Game Awards with the way that people are up in arms. Like,
right.
I feel like that this specific with it being a massive expansion for one of the most highly regarded games of all time. Looking at last year, Cyberpunk, part of those growing pains, Phantom Liberty was put in the ongoing game category, but it's like, because there wasn't a DLC category, I feel like that people just felt like it fit there best, even though it's not an ongoing game. Like, it's one of those things, but I feel like as things are settling, we're going to kind of figure it out. So I don't know where I sit quite yet. But
and like, I mean, speaking of that kind of thing, you're bringing in genre, which is such a good point, because not only is that a problem with video games, with, like you said, so many games having RPG elements. I mean, Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 have a lot of RPG elements. You're gaining experience, you're leveling up, you're deciding which skills to upgrade,
like
or
a
whatever.
skill tree, basically.
No one in their right mind would call that an RPG,
Right.
like put that in a best RPG nomination. But on the flip side, you look at movies and TV, movies like The Martian being nominated for like best comedy or musical, or like
the Golden Globes are a joke, but
right. But again, I mean, it's the same kind of thing though, where
for sure,
it's a technically an award show for an entertainment medium,
for sure.
And I've heard people say this a lot, which you had mentioned with, Elden Ring came out a couple years ago, it already got all the recognition that it, so give it to somebody. At the same time, I get it. I do. At the same time, it's also kind of like, why would you punish somebody for doing an amazing job twice?
Sure.
People can win more than one Oscar. You know what I mean? Like, sure. Just because you did a great job 2 years ago doesn't mean you shouldn't be praised for doing a great job this year. Again, I'm not saying it's being done perfectly right now, because it is growing industry, growing pains, all that sort of thing. But yeah, I think it is a bit overblown. I feel like people that are trying to write off the entire award show for this and trying to, you see it every year this kind of thing happens with, people accused, like, oh yeah, you see whose, pockets are getting lined. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that Bandai Namco and FromSoft are just lining the pockets of these 150 journalists.
Sure.
To throw their name. No, just.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, gamers love a conspiracy. To bring in Cayman's thoughts, and then we're going to move on to the next category. Cayman texted me a couple things that he wanted me to kind of sneak in throughout the show. One of them was he wants to call Elden Ring's GOTY nom a disgrace to the games industry at large, by taking the spotlight off of hardworking devs and putting it back on a game that already was given its due. So he's essentially on the complete opposite side of the debate,
and that's okay.
And that's okay. Fine. Yeah. But so yeah, like we said, we see it from all sides. But Jake in the chat does say a common dumpster boy W.
W's in the chat. Throw them in.
I'm playing that role of like, I just want everyone to be happy, so I'm not gonna necessarily say what I think, and also because I don't care about Elden Ring at all.
I didn't even touch this. I mean, I kind of hinted that earlier. I did not touch this DLC.
Now we'll see if it does end up winning Game of the Year. If I'm pissed, we'll see where I actually fall in the debate if it actually wins the award. But I do expect it. I would be so shocked if it doesn't win something. So Agreed. I'm going to go with you and say best RPG goes to Shadow of the Erdtree. Next up, we have Best Action Adventure Game, which is Astrobot, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Silent Hill 2, Star Wars Outlaws, The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. The perfect fucking example to follow up my genre comment. These 5 games are not the same fucking genre. Astrobot, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Silent Hill 2, Star Wars Outlaws, and The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. That's like 5 different genres in one. And they're saying it's the same fucking category. Absurd. But regardless, Jordan,
I don't think I just how like disparate this category was until you pointed out just now.
Hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's not, some of these don't even have their own categories, but Astrobot, that's like basically a action platformer. Prince of Persia: Lost Crown is a straight up Metroidvania, which some could argue is just a slightly more specialized action platformer. But anyway, Silent Hill 2, survival horror. Star Wars Outlaws, I can see that being in this. It has a lot of open world RPG elements. I agree. But
that one makes sense in this category. That might be the only one that makes complete sense in this category to me.
I mean, I do think Echoes of Wisdom makes perfect sense for this category.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Because the way that they describe it, I think if you want to pull up the official description, you're more than welcome. But I do believe that it
Yeah.
throws in something as far as, puzzle solving
It does.
and
That's
in
right.
addition to action and things like that. And I mean,
Which, like, sure, Silent Hill 2 has puzzles, but it's a survival horror game. That's why I feel like it would make we get so many platformers every year. Have a platforming category.
yeah.
We have so many horror games every year. Have a horror category. Like, what's the deal?
What's
I
the
feel like that's
deal
so
with the
easy.
Game
What's the
Awards
deal with
category?
Cayman says Astrobot. What's your vote?
I'm saying Echoes of Wisdom. I think this is the one, a moment ago I said with Astrobot coming up against Echoes of Wisdom for a family game, I think that Astrobot's taking that one. I think this is Echoes of Wisdom's to lose. I think that it encompassed, to a T what the official description of an action adventure game should be, as well as just being an incredible video game overall.
For sure.
So.
I'm going to, even though I've not played it, I played the tutorial, but I'm going to throw my vote behind Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I hope that they get their flowers for this.
I would not be mad at that. I did love that game.
But I won't be surprised if Astrobot just wins every category it's in.
Yeah.
And that's what Cayman picked. Next up, best action game. We have Black Myth Wukong, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Helldivers 2, Warhammer, as Jeff Keighley would say, 40,000 K, Space Marine 2, and Stellar Blade.
He says 40,000 K.
He said 40,000 K.
Oh
Cayman says Black Myth Wukong. What do you got, Jordan?
First of all, I want to throw in hit the alarm for the sound effect that I didn't tell you about and that you don't even have. I'm going to talk about my first snub of the year.
Woo, woo, woo. Let's go back.
I love it. I think this would have been the perfect category for Grand Blue Fantasy Relink.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
It is a very action-focused RPG. So you could have put it in an RPG category as well, but like just it is so clean. The combat is so addictive. It is just so much fun to play. I wish it would have been nominated for anything at all, but especially it could have fit in this category.
Sure.
So I want to throw that out. But to actually answer my friend's question here, I'm putting my big bucks. I think this is the one for Helldivers 2.
Okay.
Both my heart and my official pick go to Helldivers 2 on this one.
So this one, Cayman put Black Myth, which he also, his third and final thing he would like me to include here. He says, call Black Myth's nom Dirty Money. If you want to call it Communist China's doing, that's up to you, he says.
I have some thoughts on that. I mean,
and so that joke aside, Cayman's joke aside, it being nominated in so many categories, especially big categories, it goes back to that global conversation we were having. Black Myth Wukong has such a force behind it, especially from the audience vote. I would be willing to bet if they looked at, like, if they released the stats of what the audience vote was, like 90% of the audience vote is going to go to Black Myth Wukong in this category, is my guess. I think it's going to have so much, because truthfully, there aren't enough fucking titty boys to vote on Stellar Blade in this category. So I feel like Black Myth Wukong is probably going to get a shit ton of audience votes. I just don't know. I don't know. I kind of go back to this thing that I've not brought up yet, but as I was kind of going through and planning my own nomination predictions, there's that idea of like, okay, well, it was nominated for Game of the Year, so it should win this category, right? Like, I feel like there is some truth to that. I don't know if there's data to support that per se, but I kind of feel like Black Myth has a pretty solid shot of winning this category based on it being the only one here and nominated for Game of the Year too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
So I'm going to side with Cayman, not say anything about the country of China, but I'm going to vote for Black Myth Wukong personally. Next up, best VR/AR game, Arizona, where AR in Arizona is capitalized.
Clever.
Clever. Arizona Sunshine Remake, Asgard's Wrath 2, Batman. They could have put AR of Arkham Shadow capital, but they didn't. I guess because it's not AR, it's VR. Metal Hellsinger VR, and Metro Awakening. In case you couldn't follow my thought process there because I interjected myself 4 separate times, Arizona Sunshine Remake, Asgard's Wrath 2, Batman Arkham Shadow, Metal Hellsinger VR, and Metro Awakening. Cayman says Asgard's Wrath 2. Patrick also says Asgard's Wrath 2, but I won't be shocked if Arkham Shadow gets it.
Yeah,
Jordan,
that's from mindset. I honestly forgot that Asgard's Wrath 2 was the same one that had been getting like so much recognition.
Yeah.
Because I think it was maybe one of those weird situations where I think it came out at the tail end of last year, maybe?
It was the very end of December last year.
Okay, thank you.
Ends from several outlets, including IGN.
Because that's why I was like, this can't be the same game, right? This must be the sequel, so I don't care about that. I'm going to put my vote behind Batman. And I could change it, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say Batman.
Okay. For most of today, I was going to be saying Batman here, but as I saw Cayman vote for Asgard's Wrath 2, and I was like, is that the same Asgard's Wrath? And I was like, it sure is. I feel like now maybe the voters are going to forget that.
Right.
Maybe they're going to go for the recency of Batman.
There was like a solid 3 months where every single piece of content I was trying to consume had an ad for Asgard's Wrath 2 in front of it, and it was driving me insane.
Because it was like a included in the MetaQuest whatever at the time.
Yeah.
So like a lot of people played that game. Next up, only got a few left. That's not true. We have several left. Ooh, we got to pick up the pace. Best mobile game. We have AFK Journey, Balatro, Wuthering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero, and Pokemon trading card game Pocket. Cayman says Balatro. What do you got, Jordan?
I say Balatro. Heart goes to TCGP, but I think Balatro is going to take it.
I think so too. That game is just so fucking good, and goes back to what I said earlier about it being the only one here nominated elsewhere.
Right.
Game of the year specifically. New indie game: Animal Well, Balatro, Manor Lords, Pacific Drive, and The Plucky Squire. Me and Cayman going Balatro.
Jordan, you know I'm going Animal Well. I am still just astounded at what a single dev managed to pull off with this game, with as like just polished as it is. I think it deserves anything that it can win, and this is one of the only ones it has. So
I don't necessarily think it's a 2-horse race here, but if there is a second horse, I do think it's Animal Well for this category. I just don't know that the other 3 are going to have the juice.
The other 3 don't have anything to do with this category. I don't know why they're here. This is
exactly. So following debut indie game is best independent game. We have Animal Well again, Balatro again, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which is maybe my favorite title of the year, Neva, and UFO 50. You're quite stuck between a rock and a hard place here.
I'm pressing triangle to say Neva.
Nice.
Neva.
I could see a Neva surprise win here, but with the amount of love people have for Balatro, and again, it being a game of the year nom, its Metacritic is like a 94 or something. Like I think it's going to have the juice. But as someone who hasn't played Neva yet, and I plan to, I would love to see them get the recognition too.
Yeah. It's one of those situations where I see both sides again, where you're talking about, X game is nominated for game of the year as well, so it's most likely to win this category. And part of me is like, it has other chances to win in that category, so maybe it should go to something else. It's like,
Yeah, no, I hear you. Next up, we got best community support. We have Baldur's Gate 3, ? Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, Helldivers 2, and No Man's Sky. Nomansky. Cayman says Baldur's Gate 3. This is one of the tough ones for me. Where Fortnite is one of those games where it gets such an incredible amount of support from Epic that I feel like people don't actually appreciate the amount of support that game gets. Like, it's getting new modes all the time. It's getting new skins like every 2 hours. That's an exaggeration, but
barely.
Like, the amount of support that game gets is like criminal, kind of. But I feel like it just never gets, like, this is one of the ones I went years back. The only game of here, actually there's 2 games here that have already won in the past: Baldur's Gate 3 and Final Fantasy 14. Final Fantasy 14 has won twice before. Baldur's Gate won last year. I won't be surprised if that wins again. That's what Cayman is predicting. I don't think it's going to be Final Fantasy 14. I feel like that game has kind of fallen off a bit as someone who doesn't play it. I have a couple plants in the FF14 community, and kind of the rumblings I hear is that
Little
it's
ficus.
yeah. I got a little ficus fantasy 14. And I'm sorry, that was bad.
That was fantastic.
Thank you. But yeah, I don't know. I think I kind of want to go Helldivers 2 here, especially with their whole like those first couple months of just their complete tripling down, and like honestly, like the way that the community support of that game was just like completely driving the meta, I think was really cool. So
Yes.
I'm gonna put my vote behind Helldivers 2. What about you?
Helldivers 2. Not only
yeah.
were they tripling down on like expanding the servers and also, letting us get little glimpses at the meta narrative of the game, but also they were just so fantastically transparent about pretty much everything, especially in those first few months when the game was out, talking about
Yeah.
what they were and weren't going to be looking at improving or changing about the experience, or just again, just straight up saying like, "Hey, we didn't anticipate for this amount of traffic on the server, so we're gonna shut it down for a couple hours. So sorry, and here's a free cape or whatever." Like I feel like they were really. There's a lot of very positive back and forth with the community from those devs that I think should be recognized.
Hell yeah. Next up, we got best ongoing game is between Destiny 2, Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 14, Helldivers 2, and the only one that's not a sequel, Fortnite.
I think Fortnite's been around long enough to be a sequel of itself at this
For sure. It is like we're in like Fortnite 10 at this point. Cayman voted Destiny 2. I am also going to vote Destiny 2. I think the final shape. Are you on Destiny 2 as well?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I think it, as the final piece of meaningful DLC, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, for Destiny 2.
Yeah, it's like it's weird. They're still putting out decent sized stuff. They have a roadmap for it. But yeah, as far as
this is like the last big one, right?
the saga of Light and Dark or whatever that started with Destiny 1 10 years ago, like this is the final piece of that main story.
Yeah.
There's still side stories to be told and all that. But yes, so I'm completely on with both of you. I think it deserves this. I think that this speaks again to wishing that there was a separate category for expansions.
Sure.
Because the final shape was fantastic.
Hell yeah.
I've been a fan of Destiny for the entirety of the 10-year run. I kind of go back and forth. I'll have like 2 or 3 straight months of playing it nonstop and then fall off for a year here and there. But like I've always had love for it, and I came back. Actually, I don't think I've ever even told Cayman this. He was kind enough to send me a little something for my birthday back in May, and so I used that to put toward buying the final shape, and it was a great time. I wish that I had more like a clan to play with or something like that to really get the full experience. But
sure,
even playing through it solo was really, really cool to see how they wrapped things up and how they like brought up the gameplay changes and the story changes and stuff that they brought through. Very well done, and I was very impressed.
Hell yeah. I just couldn't believe that they brought Peter Dinklage back as the main character. But
next wizard came from the movie.
Games for Impact. I know, right? The games for Impact, we have Closer the Distance. Never heard of that. Indica, which I really want to play. Neva, Life is Strange Double Exposure, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, and Tales of Kinzera Zao. Cayman is putting his vote behind Neva. I'm a bit confused with this specific category this year because, granted, I haven't played Closer the Distance and Indica, so I can't necessarily speak to those games. But like Life is Strange Double Exposure, from what I know about it, I don't quite know like the message. I wish Kayla from JK Games was here to mention it, what the message was. Like Cinema Saga, it's pretty clear like what the kind of impact point is there, and same with Tales of Kinzera. Is there one with Neva? Because I've not played it yet. Does it make sense that it's here for you?
It does. Neva's will be more along the lines of, taking care of each other, taking care of the environment, like that sort of a message.
Okay.
If I had to guess, when it comes to Life is Strange, it may be more of just messages of acceptance for, the LGBTQ community, things like that. My vote is going to Senua Saga. I adored that game more than most, and of course the overall message of mental health awareness and acceptance and all that kind of stuff was very, very powerful, very well done. And I won't linger on it because, again, I know you got things to do with your life, but
Sure.
I do feel like this is a major snub for 1000 Exorcist.
Sure.
Very, very much so deserve to be it. If not for best
That's a
indie,
shame.
then should have been in this category. So.
Yeah, I feel like that must be going back to that. Just not enough hands on it. I don't. Maybe there just weren't enough people that got to play the game.
I forget where I heard it, somewhere in Discord, I think, but kind of the opposite side of the coin for Wukong, perhaps. That
Sure.
with some of the messaging for 1000 Exorcist being critical of China and the media conglomerates at large wanting to cater. I'm not trying to insult any that.
Sure.
But just
sure.
it's the same for the movies industry as well, where like you'll have people, there's like an inexplicable scene that takes place in Hong Kong because Hollywood wants to play nice with the Chinese film industry because it's huge.
For
and
sure.
So like that kind of thing. So I think that I could be an influence.
Could certainly be the case. I hadn't seen that, but that makes sense from the little bit that I've played of 1000 Exorcists so far.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to throw mine behind Tales of Kenzera Zhao. I would love for Hellblade to win this. I feel like of the games that have been nominated, I feel like that game, and Hellblade is like a close second for me, but I feel like that game from the jump was just so clear about its message of it being about like dealing with grief and like how to kind of work through that.
Yeah.
I feel like it just as like so many people know about it and played it, at least, even if the game isn't like the best game in the list, probably it's not even like top 4 probably. But just that vibe of like with it specifically being Games for Impact, I could see that getting the W.
Oh, the themes and the message about grief and loss and all that for Tales of Kenzera were one of the things that I feel like really it did well.
Yeah,
because again, we've talked. It was not my favorite overall game as far as like just a playing experience, but as far as that aspect was concerned, it did very, very well. So I would not be mad if it won. I think that Hellblade 2 should. That's my pick, but yeah, Tales of Kenzera, if it won, I would not be shocked nor angry about that.
For sure. Innovation and accessibility. We have Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Diablo 4, Dragon Age The Veilguard. It's single nomination. Prince of Persia The Lost Crown, and Star Wars Outlaws. I am going to throw my vote with Cayman behind The Veilguard. It's funny. It's like this year of these nominees, I don't feel like there's a clear like The Last of Us Part 2 kind of nomination where there's a game that like from the jump has been like, we are accessibility forward. We have a lot of huge kind of accessibility features that we're kind of featuring here. But in playing The Veilguard so far, I've noticed some in ways and of the other ones that I've played, which is admittedly only half the list. Like I dabbled in Black Ops 6. But I feel like that was the most noticeable of them for me. So I'm going to go there. And, I hope that it can win the one award that it's nominated for. But what about you?
Yeah, I'm going with Prince of Persia Lost Crown. I want to give a shout out to Steve Saylor, the blind gamer. Anyone who's a KFBF may have seen him on their content before as well. He had a great video earlier in the year kind of detailing some of the accessibility options for the game. And honestly, there's a lot of overlap between the accessibility there and for Outlaws that I noticed. But things like being able to, change the outline and the color of friendlies versus enemies, difficulty sliders for various aspects of difficulty, whether it be, spike traps or enemy damage or your damage output, all kinds of things that I think were very, very well done.
Hell yeah. I didn't realize that. That's really cool. Next up, we got Best Performance with Brianna White from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Hannah Tell from Life is Strange Double Exposure, Umberly Gonzalez from Star Wars Outlaws, Luke Roberts from Silent Hill 2, and Melina Jurgens from Cinema Saga Hellblade 2. None of the website that I pulled this from didn't mention the character they played, but for the most part, these are all the protagonists of those games. If not all of these are. Brianna, I think is Aerith, I think.
Yes. Right? And then Hannah is Max or Maxine.
Got it.
For Life is Strange.
Cayman is voting Hellblade 2, Cinema Saga. I assume, my guess is that Cognitive Clips aligns. And
I'm aligned.
Does Patrick.
Love it.
I mean, come on. If someone came to me and said, you can only pick one winner and it has to be right or I kill you, I would choose this category.
Right.
Jurgens. Best. I hope no one does that. By the way, just to be clear,
please don't do that to him.
Best audio. We have Astrobot, Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, Final Fantasy 7, Rebirth, Cinema Saga, Hellblade 2, and Silent Hill 2. Came in throwing his behind Hellblade 2. What about you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just again, if you haven't played either of these games, the way that they utilize the 3D binaural audio to, emphasize the, voices that she hears throughout her journey through the games, and on top of that, just every little sound and noise that goes on in the game is very well done too. But
for sure,
the technology that they've utilized for replicating auditory hallucinations is just incredible.
I would be shocked if they'd lost this category too. Like it's kind of like the point of the game. That's minimizing a lot of their work, but like it's like in the making of parts that they released, like they were very audio forward.
Oh yes, yeah, so, they've been pretty clear about that. So I think you're on the ball there.
Next up, best score in music, we have Astrobot, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Metaphor ReFantazio, Silent Hill 2, and Stellar Blade. Cayman is putting his vote behind Metaphor. This one I'm very torn on, so I'm interested to hear what you think.
I'm saying ReFantazio.
I mean, the battle theme in that game alone is so good. Like headphones in, full blast, giving yourself tinnitus.
Singers, Patrick.
I mean, I tried that in life. Don't do it. But like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like one of the most iconic things about that franchise and that game is the music of Final Fantasy VII. So like I'm a bit torn. I'm between the two there.
That's totally fair. Aren't there like 200 something songs in the soundtrack for that game? It's insane.
But like, don't sleep on Astrobot either. Like the score of Astrobot is so fucking good. So like I'm really torn here. I've heard Stellar Blade's music's good.
Anyone who's played Stellar Blade was extremely excited that they put the soundtrack on Spotify. They were like, "Yes, it's finally here!"
And that's the only thing they could talk about that entire game was the music. Nothing else about those games.
Nothing stood out.
Those two giant songs in that game, they couldn't stop talking about.
There were petitions to put more songs in because they were censored.
Correct. You know what? We've been aligned the last few. I'm going to say Rebirth for this one, but I hope that it is either Astrobot or Metaphor. But I'm going to try to go with the brain pick on this one.
Okay,
personally,
I respect
it. Down to the final four. Trademark. Best art direction: Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, Metaphor ReFantazio, and Neva. This one's so hard for me, personally. And the category is difficult to choose from, Jordan. But where's your head at on this? I don't want to keep assuming just because I know you like the games you like a lot, but
yeah.
Where are you
you would have been correct to assume. I can't even exaggerate that from like the very first moments of Neva, I was just completely captivated by the art style and everything else that's happening on screen. But this is, if there was nothing else that was nominated for, then it would have been this.
Sure.
But I'm glad that it was nominated, and I feel like it does deserve the nominations for everything that it got. But the art direction specifically is just so incredibly beautiful. I said it before, and I'll say it again, that taking, Grease and their watercolor kind of aesthetic, and it's the same artist. I mean, the way that it builds on that and improves it, it makes Grease look like a tech demo. Like it is that much of an improvement, I feel like. And I want it to be recognized.
Hell yeah. I hope enough people have played it in that capacity.
There's been at least 12 people.
There's been at least 12. Because I do think Metaphor has a really strong shot here, because like Atlas games are just
dripping
with art direction.
They are moist with art.
They're God. Cayman is putting his vote behind Shadow of the Erd Tree. I'm going to agree with Jordan and go Neva, but if it's not Neva, I think it's Metaphor. I don't think the other three here personally, but we'll see. But I'm going to say Neva as my official guess. You convinced me. Although I did write it in my phone earlier, to be clear. I'm not just riding your coattails. Best narrative, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Metaphor ReFantazio, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, and Silent Hill 2. This one came in, put Metaphor. For me, this is actually the most difficult category to choose from, personally, because a lot of people really love Silent Hill 2, but I think that that's the clear no chance in this category, personally. Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, I think really stepped up compared to Cinema Sacrifice, with kind of it being just a lot more narrative forward, it not being as like secondary to the rest of the experience, like the first one being a lot more like vibes focused, experience focused. Like this one very much was like we want to tell a story. And then Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, I don't know that there will be enough people to vote for it, but I do, as this being the first Yakuza game that I've ever played to completion, like the story is the best part of the game. It like the whole journey of that game and the places that it goes and the way it culminates, I think is so great. But I do feel like it's kind of a race between Rebirth and ReFantazio. But I'm kind of I don't know. What do you are you going Hellblade on this one, or where are you at?
Hellblade is where my heart lies, but I'm going to lock in a pick for Metaphor as well. I hear so many good things about it. Again, just won't expand on this, but this is another snub for 1,000 Extra Resist.
For sure.
But I think this category is funny, though, because, again, the way that people want to lock, zero in on certain games, being none in for certain things, there's 2 remakes in the narrative category.
Sure.
One of which is apparently one of the most convoluted messes
Silent
of
Hill
the narrative. No, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, so you mean Rebirth?
I mean Rebirth. Like,
here's the thing:
even people who love it say that it's twisty and convoluted, and you have to look up a guide half the time to even understand what's happening.
That's all Final Fantasy VII games, or I mean, just Final Fantasy games in general. I do feel like, though, I know we're running long, but I do think, even though I'm not necessarily a Rebirth defender, even though I'm about to defend the game, I do feel like that is in its own category with remakes. Because now, granted, I haven't played the original. Well, that's not true. I played like the first 15 hours of the original, which is really not a lot of the game. Like I never left the first kind of area. But from what I understand of the story of Final Fantasy VII, like they're bringing in so much new stuff, and not like Resident Evil 4 has some new story beats in it, but like there is a lot of, from what I understand, major sweeping changes to Final Fantasy VII, like the original story in both remake.
There is.
So I do feel like this game, and like it's a lot more, I think, than a remake. I think that it's kind of in its own category with like the remaster versus remake. Like this, I think, kind of lives on its own. But that is a good point of like Final Fantasy generally is kind of hard to follow, a bit convoluted, that kind of thing. So yeah, my kind of original gut was Metaphor. So I'm going to stick with that and align with Cayman and Jordan on that.
Yeah, I definitely was simplifying it for funsies. Yeah, the remake trilogy, I think it is kind of silly to break it out like that, but they clearly are adding in a whole lot of new elements that most remakes don't do. So I will very fully acknowledge that with my whole chest.
Oh yes, say with your chest. Yeah. Best game direction. Our final 2 categories: best game direction and game of the year. Best game direction has Astrobot Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor ReFantazio, which are the same exact nominees for game of the year. This one, I also did a little bit of research.
Lay it on me.
The last several years of this, it's flip-flopped, where last year, it was a different winner of Game of the Year and Game Direction. The year before that, same winner. Year before that, different. Year before that, same winner. Year before that, different. Like it for several years in a row, it flip flops. And it's funny. It's like it's usually when there's like the really, really clear, like Elden Ring won both. But Sekiro didn't. That one, the other one was Death Stranding won best game direction, whereas Sekiro won game of the year. Like one of those years where like it's just not a clear winner.
Right.
God of War Ragnarok, I think, was one where it won both. Last of Us Part 2 was one where it won both, but It Takes Two shared it with, my memory is falling short on that one. And then last year, Baldur's Gate 3, Game of the Year, Best Game Direction, which I agreed with, went to Alan Wake 2.
Right? Yeah.
And so part of me is like, I go back and forth between it being like that clear titan that's going to win the whole thing, or there just being a game where the direction was so clear and well executed, like Alan Wake 2, where even though Baldur's Gate 3 for a lot of people is an all-timer, and a lot of people thought that that was going to win Best Game Direction, the game direction of Alan Wake 2 was just, I thought, an achievement. Oh, I remember. It Takes Two was with Deathloop, which won Best Game Direction that year, which I think
I could have sworn that Ragnarok didn't win Game of the Year because of Elden Ring. Am I wrong?
You're right. No, you're right. I'm thinking of OG God of War.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
2018. That won both Game Direction and Game of the Year.
Gotcha.
My bad. Yes, you're
No, you're good. I was just making sure I wasn't losing my mind.
No, you're not. You're not. I am.
This time.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit torn on this one. Where like I'm a little unclear on whether it's going to follow the pattern of like both are going to win this year. Is it going to be Erd Tree for both, or is it going to flip flop? Hard to say. Where's your head at on this one, Jordan?
So do you want me to go ahead and give both?
Yeah, let's do both. We'll do both for everybody.
So I'm actually thinking Game Direction is going to go to Rifantatio, and Game of the Year is going to go Astrobot.
Okay.
I
respect it.
I think that after all this hubbub with Erd Tree, which again I still say is worthy of being nominated where it is, I don't think it's going to win. I think that the other heavy hitters this year are going to come swinging, and I think that from what I understand of the game direction for Rifantatio, that it would be worthy of the win over the rest. Whereas just the sheer joy and bliss that people have described from playing Astrobot will give that the edge for the overall Game of the Year.
Hell yeah.
Where's your head
at? So Cayman says Black Myth Wukong is going to win Best Game Direction. I kind of think that we might have a difference, like you just said with Metaphor and then Astrobot. I want to put my vote behind Balatro for Best Game Direction.
Okay.
Of it being, it has that indie juice, and it also is just like, how can a game as old as poker and change it up in such a way that it feels like a completely new game, I think is kind of remarkable. Like
that's an achievement.
And Balatro is one of the only games. Now, granted, I can't say this for Veilguard because it just came out, but like I keep coming back to Balatro throughout the year. Like I might not play it for 2 months, and then I play it for like 5 hours over a weekend. It's just so fucking good. And part of me wonders if it has the chance to win Game of the Year. So Cayman says Wukong for Game Direction, and then he does say Balatro for Game of the Year. I was kind of thinking through the Game of the Year award of like, could Black Myth and Elden Ring split the vote for the Souls-like camp? Could Rebirth and Rifantasio split the vote for the RPG camp? Which would leave Astrobot and Balatro as like the two kind of fighting. I don't like that. Might be I'm thinking of it like too much. I'm going a bit too far in my thinking. But for me right now, Astrobot is my Game of the Year. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've heard it a lot.
And I do feel like the 3D platformer generally doesn't get to stand up against the rest of the pack in this category in like a way that they win. Like things like Odyssey doesn't win the year it comes out. Like those kinds of things where like these masterpiece 3D platformers just don't ever quite have that kind of extra sauce to get the win for Game of the Year.
In Odyssey's defense, it came out the same year as Breath of the Wild, where it had no chance to win.
Right, which is like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, but the point still stands where there's usually something else that's another Titan that it has to go up against. And
like our industry does typically tend to be RPG favorable. RPG like a lot of like Baldur's Gate 3, Dragon Age Inquisition, Witcher 3, like those kinds of games typically, if they're up for the category, win. So like I won't be surprised if Erdtree does in fact win this category. But I don't know. I do think that I'm going to also say Astrobot. I think that game, like I would love for you to play that game, Jordan. I know you haven't played it yet, and you're not planning on getting it necessarily this year, but it is just, especially if you love PlayStation, it just does something so magical throughout the game. And there are these certain levels that I won't spoil that are just like kind of revelations from a 3D
What I
platform.
saw of it, like I saw, Jericho playing some, I saw Jake twitching playing some. It looked like so much fun.
It's so good. And like I would love for Metaphor to win because Atlas is also a company that typically, like a Gorilla, typically is always in that like number 2 or number 3 spot because a massive masterpiece comes out that same year. Like Atlas kind of gets that sometimes, not as bad as Gorilla. No one gets it as bad as Gorilla, but with Horizon specifically. But Metaphor is really special, and I would love for that to also get recognized. But I'm going to throw my vote behind Astrobot
I like it
to win here. But
So
I think there's
broke
a
me.
Balatro chance too.
I think there is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
You broke me because you said like a gorilla, as in like Gorilla Games. And my thought was like a dragon, but like with
like a Gorilla
ape.
Infinite Wealth.
And I was like, what? What? Like, is that a bit that I missed? Like, what are you talking? Oh, right.
Yeah, like a Guerrilla Studios or Guerrilla Games.
Yes.
What are they called? What's their second
Guerrilla
word?
Games.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think I'm going Astrobot. Like I say it and I have like immediate buyer's remorse. Like I kind of want to go Balatro. I kind of want to go Refantasio. Like I kind of want to go Erdtree. Like I kind of want to be the one to be like, you know what, fuck it. It's gonna get it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm gonna go with my heart here too. And I'm gonna hope that Team Asobi gets a W and this gets the word out because Astrobot is criminally underplayed. Not enough people playing Astrobot. I'll say it. In fact, I just did.
On the record, guys.
On the record, folks.
Sorry.
Go play Astrobot,
folks.
So for game direction, I said Balatro. For game of the year, I'm saying Astrobot. For game of the year, Cayman is saying Balatro. And for direction, he's saying Wukong. And Jordan, for direction, I did this the worst possible way. For game direction, said Refantasio. And game of the year is also saying Astrobot. I know we're running long, but you're here already. You've already listened.
Oh yeah, I'm here for. I'm here for.
I want to bring in some snubs. I want to bring in some audience submissions, and then we'll go on our merry ways.
Yeah,
snubs and subs. So we've said it a few times. 1000X Resist. Even though I've not finished the game, as far as I am in, it is kind of crazy that this game is not getting nominated for a single award. I've already yelled about the Veilguard. I'm a bit surprised that Thank Goodness You're Here didn't get anything, even
I didn't even think about that.
Pretty shocked at that one.
That is shocking
because that game rips. And famously, their first game, Untitled Goose Game, won Game of the Year the year that it came out.
As one of the biggest random like little indies that wins. Yeah.
And then also surprised Dragon's Dogma 2 didn't make more of a splash with how liked that game was.
That's true too.
And then my final snub, which is 70% a bit, 30% not a bit. But remakes are all over the Game Awards these days. Backyard Baseball 97 should have been nominated for Sports Game of the Year.
Fair.
That game, what was I playing earlier, Jordan, when I couldn't listen to the story of 1000X Resist, but I wanted to be playing something while multitasking? I went back into Backyard Baseball 97. I hit a grand slam because I'm trying to hit 50 grand slams to get that achievement, which is fucking criminal, by the way. But
yeah, that's bonkers.
It's so much fun. I just don't think it made enough of a splash for people to actually consider it. And because it is just a 1-to-1 remake, people are like, okay, this is a game from 1997. Why should we nominate it in 2024? But I still think it should have. Any other snubs that you want to mention before I go to the audience?
Yeah, like I said, I think that Grand Blue Fantasy Relink should have gotten some sort of recognition. I mean, I think that the art style, the action combat, all that was fantastic. Again, not that it would have beat out some of these other amazing games, but it should have gotten some flowers. Still wish Final Shape would have gotten some sort of recognition.
Sure.
Even for like something like narrative. would have been great for it. Other than that, I mean, even I'm just looking at my, the games I played through this year, and even the ones that I did enjoy more than others, some of them I'm still just like, yeah, I understand why they weren't there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny. In the Discord, we've been having this discussion of like comparing this year to last year. I kind of started to say this earlier, but then I think I lost my train of thought. And Evan Brando, friend of the show, he's been on the show many times before, but not in a while. We need to remedy that. Has kind of been like one of the voices of like, I just don't think this year has the stuff compared to other years, and that's why. And like, the more I sit with that, the more I'm starting to kind of agree. Like, there's so many games that I love from this year, but I think it's starting to kind of settle in this like, there isn't a clear, this is an all-timer for me, at least yet, with the exception of potentially Astrobot for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I haven't played Neva. I haven't finished Veilguard. Like, there's still some Indiana Jones looks really good. Like, there's still some games that I haven't been able to either start or finish, but it's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think that what I've said in the Discord and what I'll say to all of you now listening at home is that there are so many games that came out this year that are critically acclaimed, that I think are outstanding in so many ways, but that just maybe don't have that universal, we keep using the word Titan. Like, they're not like it's some like industry-wide Titan, like a Baldur's Gate 3 or a Tears of the Kingdom or an Elden Ring vanilla or a God of War Ragnarok. Maybe they're not on that same level, but don't mistake that for there not being enough good games this year, because there are still 100%. Too many good games this year to even get through all of them at the same time.
Big agree. I missed one of my snubs, and then I'm going to go to the audience.
Yeah.
I don't know where it would have fit, admittedly, but I would have loved for something Dungeons of Hinterberg, maybe art direction. That game, I just really clicked for me, and I think I'm not alone in that, but I'm definitely in the minority on that. So that's a hard pick. I fully understand why it didn't get nominated, but it would have been nice.
I even saw some people saying that it would have been a good fit for Games for Impact, just the way that it was like, it's
sure. Yeah, that's a good point. I think so. Yeah, I agree. I think that should have been in Games for Impact. But I just think, not enough people played it, and like the reviews were fine, but they weren't astounding. Mm-hmm. And Xbox just still swings and misses with the games they release not getting nominated for meaningful awards at the Game Awards.
Yeah. Speaking of Xbox, one quick thing. I don't know if this is a full-on snub, just because it could have been nominated because it is excellent, but 9 Souls is coming to Game Pass. So for anyone listening who has not played 9 Souls on Steam, please play this on Game Pass, because it is fantastic. It is. I've heard a lot of people describe it as like a 2D hand-drawn Sekiro, and it fits the vibe. But as I told Cayman a few weeks ago, it does have those difficulty sliders from the very beginning. So you can still experience the wonderful art and the story and all that, even if you want to turn down the combat. So I'll throw that out there.
To close out the Game of the Year conversation, and then we have a couple kind of quick things, and then we'll be on our way.
Little
quickies. Ooh, maybe that's what we call the segment. Mr. The Human, who was in the chat earlier, I sent out a call on our Instagram, which if you don't follow us on Instagram, you should, because we do this a lot of our episodes. When I asked for predictions for the Game Awards, he said, if I don't make the show tonight, which he did, but I'm still going to say, complain about 1000X Resist getting snubbed, which we did, and now we are again. Gregaman X says, one person will rush the stage. Could be. Ooh. I hope not, but could be. Nickery John says Metaphor surprises and wins because of its themes, combat, music, art, and just overall polish. He does say Astrobot was his favorite, but Metaphor still is a close second, and he also won't be surprised if Elden Ring wins. All fair and good points. So that's it for predicting winners of the Game Awards. We got through that real fast. I would say
very fast,
very, very fast, speedy, quick. But I don't want a segment to die after 1 week. So we're going to do a quick, this week's spotlight, name pending. we're gonna do a quick this week spotlight. That just sounds horrible grammatically. So I need to maybe I need to rework the name here, but just some quick news hits that we didn't have time to actually talk about, or just aren't a big enough story to talk about. But I think you might be interested in knowing. Remedy has announced that it's that Control 2 is going to be an action RPG, so they're bringing in some RPG elements into Control 2. The PlayStation Portal is getting cloud streaming today to beta test users, which is very interesting. Sony is reportedly in talks to acquire From Software owner Kadokawa, which is very interesting. Phil Spencer says Avowed wasn't delayed due to quality concerns. It just was a timing issue with too many games coming out this fall.
Fair.
Plus, a $90 version of the game is going to let you play 5 days early. Fucking stop with that.
What even is that?
I know. Trading is in the works for Pokemon Trading Card Game Pocket. And then later this year, we're going to be getting some new cards. So look out for that. And then finally, which is something I am very interested in, and I'm toying with the idea next year. So let me know if this interests you, both Jordan right now and also the audience.
Okay.
Half-Life 2's 20th anniversary documentary was just released, and in that they showed some unseen footage of episode 3, and there's some like bits about why that game never came to fruition, which are all very, very interesting. But I've been wanting to play Half-Life 2 again. I mean, I played it a decade plus ago on the Orange Box on 360.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of toying with this idea of playing through it again on stream. So if that's of interest to you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because I remember loving that game, and it's such a like historical impact, but I feel like it's a game that a lot of people these days maybe don't know a ton about anymore because it's that old, right? So, and there's some familiar faces in that. Merle Dandridge from The Last of Us is in that game. There's a lot of OG actors in that game.
And without Half-Life 2's gravity gun, we don't have Portal.
Exactly. Yeah, go check out. I've only read snippets of the documentary, but it sounds like the documentary is super fascinating, and it's from NoClip, so they kind of don't miss with their documentaries. So
more like no miss.
Oh, you're fucking right. All right, and that, my friends, is our very quick, very short show. I can't believe we did all that in 15 minutes, Jordan.
I know, it's crazy.
But hey, love this new tradition that we're setting of you coming and predicting the Game Awards winners with us.
I do. I told you guys, I cannot believe it's been a full year of me like palling around on the episodes with you guys, as opposed to just being relegated to the chat like a scrub.
Fucking scrub. You could be Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips, being here on the show. But buddy, where can the folks at home find you if they don't follow you already?
Yeah, you can follow me at Cognitive Clips on Instagram, on Threads, on Bluesky. I have video content on YouTube. If you like to search by the full URL, the little ampersand, whatever you call it, username is cognitive-clips. But you just search Cognitive Clips, you will find me. And I want to give a quick plug. We mentioned Eric the Human or Mr. the Human in the chat a couple of times as he was here and also wrote in, but he, myself, and our friend Chris from the Nerdlies recorded a little Games of the Year episode that will be coming in the coming weeks. Probably looking to put it out right around the Game Awards on Eric's podcast, which is Short Game Long Talk. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be sharing links for that in the Discord that you should also join. So
hell yeah! And if you're playing Metaphor ReFantazio, speaking of Eric the Human, we are going to be doing a spoiler cast review episode of Metaphor probably in December because we really want the Dumpster Boy here for that. And also we got to finish the fucking game. So
a couple good reasons to wait.
So Nick, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to anybody else that played Metaphor. Look forward to that because we're excited to do a full spoiler cast of that show, of that game rather, on the show. You can follow me at P Schwussy, and you can follow the pod everywhere at Spotlight Games Pod. Oh, it feels so good.
I love to hear it.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know that you watched it and that you liked the show. Even if you didn't like it, let us know that you liked it. That's the fun thing we're doing. And then like the show, subscribe, tell your friends, all that BS. We're going to be back certainly, definitely next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. to review Dragon Age the Veilguard with a little spoilery cast conversation. But we might be back tomorrow. Actually, not tomorrow. We might be back Thursday for a stream. Who knows? Follow us on socials to find out. But thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.